Hi, my name is Julia Cunin. I'm a sculptor working primarily in clay, and we're in my studio in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I'll be hand building today, which is the primary way that I work. I'm going to be demonstrating how to create a freestanding sculpture primarily made out of slabs. I am going to show you how to score, how to use slip, how to make a slab, how to make a coil, the basic skills that I use all the time in my work. I'm basically going to see how far we can get with building a freestanding structure. Later on, I'll show you a structure that's already been practically finished so that you can look at how I create the surface details and texture. The truth is, with clay, you can make anything look like anything. It's very, very versatile. It's also just very, very satisfying. When I teach, first thing we do is how to make a pinch pot, so I can show you that. Let's start with that, the basics. You can use this technique for anything. So what I do is I'll start with a ball. I talk about using the palm of the hands to make the ball round. Take your thumb, put your thumb in, and squeeze your fingers against your thumb and pinch and turn and pinch and turn and pinch and turn so that you are like a human pottery wheel. Now let's see, I put it down. When you've got it opened up to a certain extent, then you can use both hands like this. And sometimes I even have students do this first because it's very hard for them to understand how to pinch clay. Because you don't want to pinch one part like this and then leave the other like this. You want to have the same amount of pressure on each area. In order to make a handle, I need to make a coil. And notice how I'm rolling. I always tell my students, you roll on your fingers, start in the middle, and roll out to get an even coil. So my technique, and this is where I will show a little bit of something called scoring. I always lose my scoring tool. That's nothing new. Here, because it blends with everything. The scoring will allow this clay to grip. It not only helps with the grip, but it helps the slip absorb a little bit into the clay, especially when your clay is a little dry. Slip is basically like clay glue, but all it is dried clay and water. I think the ideal way to make it is to just throw all your scraps in a bucket with water. Of course, it helps to take a fork and really stir it around. So I'm going to attach the handle here and here. I'm going to put a little slip. Because this clay is so wet, I really don't need to put a lot of extra slip. But what I do, instead of just putting this like here, which is not very stable, I bend it a little bit like that, take this, bend it a little here, and break it off. Then I smooth it. It should look as if it was always meant to be there, this handle. So that you smooth it so that it looks like it's actually growing out of the cup. Now, Eva Zeisel, when Eva made her dinner set for the Museum of Modern Art called the Modern Line, she wanted her pictures to feel like they were growing out of the table. Your line of your work is so important in relationship to the base that it's on. Now, you see me washing my hands all the time, and that's because when your hands are covered with slip, and they're slippery, you can't really work that well with clay. It'll all slip out. The next thing that I want to show you is how to make a slab. This is a sculpture clay, and this clay has grog in it. And the grog is mainly particles of previously fired clay that are put in to give this clay body. So that if I make this, it will not flop because it has grog in it. It's much stronger. So sometimes when you get clay, let's say I'll just fold it like this. Now, there might be air bubbles in it. And in order to get rid of air bubbles, you do something called wedging. Let's say I'm squishing the clay together, it's not very squished. I'm going to put a wire through it, and you can see that line? That's going to create an air bubble. That means that the clay has not been compressed enough. And if I make a work with that air bubble, the air will expand when it's heated up in the kiln, and it will push out the clay, and that's when the clay will crack and break. So in order to get rid of all the air bubbles in the clay, I have to wedge. The way you do it is you continuously cut and you get into a rhythm. And you can see that I'm digging in with the heels of my hands. And when you throw it, that helps compress the clay. I think that's pretty good. So to make a slab, you can use dowels. Now notice this is a pretty thick dowel. So when I roll the clay, it's going to come out the thickness of this dowel. If I want a thinner slab, I'll get a smaller dowel. First, what I do, this is my instinct, is I prepare it. Even if you're putting a slab through a slab roller, which is the easiest way to make lots of slabs, it's good to prepare. What you want is your rolling pin to be able to hit the dowels, and it won't go below the dowels. And that's what enables you to make an even slab. Oops, an air bubble. Okay, that wasn't wedged enough. I could see it because it came up, so I'm just slamming it down. It's actually great because it helps get rid of the air bubbles in general. Some people don't like this texture. It's a little rough, especially if you're using clay with grog. So what they will do is take a rib, which is this, or this, and compress the clay by gliding it over like that. You can use the wood or you can use the plastic, depending on what you want. The plastic seems to be finer. And it's compressing the particles of clay so that your surface is smooth. Now, the truth is, when I'm working, I don't really care if it's smooth or not. I like having the rough texture on my clay sculptures. I like having the imperfection and the presence of the hand. Now that I've made a slab, I do want to mention Hannah Wilke is an artist who, before she made works with latex, which involve layers and layers of folds, she worked in clay. And what she was trying to do is to create erotic imagery with the least amount of gesture and movement as possible. So in Hannah Wilke's words, all you had to do was make a slab and fold it, and in a second, you got a work of art. So I'm gonna start making a slab-built sculpture. And this is one that I made. I'm going to first begin with a base that's somewhat similar to this. You have to have these support systems that are vertical, that can carry the weight of this piece on top. And clay works best with compression. You can see gravity is pushing down on this thing. I did a bunch of sketches. Sometimes I'll work for weeks and days until I get to the right sketch. But the truth is, no matter how much I sketch and pre-think, the work ultimately changes as I am working and new ideas come in. Now this is leather hard, which means that if I want to add it to a sculpture, I can. It would stay. I made it earlier. I had to leave it out to dry. So what I'm going to do is start by cutting a bunch of triangles at random. Some people ask, how long does it take for something to get leather hard? Well, it depends on the weather. In the summer, you can put them out in the sun, but the problem is if you expose your clay to too much heat all at once, the outside is going to dry, but the inside is not, and that will create a problem. But the weather's the weather. I'm using an X-Acto knife, which I do not recommend in a classroom situation with kids or even with adults. Okay, I'll start with this. And I always throw my tools in the same pile so that I can find them later. Because as you know, I have trouble finding my tools a lot. The reason I work on a turntable is because I'm making something in 3 dimensions, which allows you, the viewer, to look at it in all directions. And that's, of course, one thing I love about sculpture. Now, this is a very thick slab. I would ordinarily not necessarily make things all this thick, but I think it's okay. People ideally want you to have everything the same thickness. That would be probably what a professional would tell you. But I don't care that much. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to build a triangular form and going to see where it leads me. I'm going to score. It's really important to use score and slip once you're using leather hard clay, because otherwise it'll crack and it won't stay together. So I'm going to take a slip on both sides, really push it down. I just take a piece of this clay and create this seam. So I don't need to do this on the outside and on the inside. That's fine to leave this like this. So by putting together these random shapes, I'm going to create some kind of a base. I like irregularity. I like asymmetry. An artist who I admire greatly, who's sadly no longer alive, is Ken Price. And when you look at Ken Price's work, it is very smooth, undulating, organic, and it looks like it could be animal, vegetable, unidentifiable. But what it does have is a constant state of movement, and that's important to me. When you're putting two slabs together to make a bigger slab, it's better to overlap. I could do this, but then when I lift it, my connection might not be very strong. So in this case, I'm going to have to try to overlap. I'm pushing in. That is going to connect my slabs better. Much, 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 much better. And then I'm going to turn it over. And in this case, I'm going to seal it. Now, other things can really help that. I can put a shape here, right on that seam, which actually also connects these two shapes to each other and will help create support. Now, the shapes I'm making are very, in a way, related to cubism or futurism in a sense, because the triangle has a lot of dynamism. And the futurists really wanted movement and speed. Even though I don't agree with the politics necessarily of the Italian futurists, I do love Boccioni, and he's just constantly moving. That's one of my favorite of all-time sculptures. As you can see, these things take a while, and I'm working fast for me. And this is starting to build, and I'm going to build out from what could be like a center. So as you can see, I demonstrated how to score, how to use slip, how to make a slab, how to make a coil. But these are the basic skills that I use every day. And the fun part is I don't really know exactly how it's going to come out, but that's okay. What I'm making, yes, it's geometric. Yes, it has cubist aspects to it, but it's using basic primary shapes. Spheres, rectangles, triangles, and that's the essence of abstraction in some sense, using basic shapes and finding an essence of something. One of my favorite artists is Oskar Schlemmer. And Oskar Schlemmer taught at the Bauhaus in Germany. And one of the goals of the Bauhaus was to bring art into everything, even the most functional object. What Schlemmer did was he created something called the Triadische Ballet, where he created the most marvelous figures. And they're made out of basic shapes, triangles, spheres, rectangles, cylinders, but they were made out of all kinds of materials that was heavy and awkward. The ballet is created by the restricted movements that the players can create. And as I am very, very interested in movement, for me, my still sculptures have to have movement. This has to work all the way around, And with this form right now, you see an interior and you see an exterior, but I'm going to close the forms. And what's fun for me is I didn't really know how these angles were going to look together, but what I'm going to be able to do is take a slab and create this really cool angle right here. And I happen to love design, and I saw work by a designer named Sergio Asti. And he made this vase called the Collina vase. It's so beautiful. It has a ziggurat form, and it's made into 4 sections. And the 4 sections are removable. And when you look down from above, it looks like a landscape, like a terraced landscape. And when you look from the side, it looks like a pyramid. It's a very, very elegant shape. But what I also like about it is that it has the potential as a puzzle to be rearranged. And for me, making my work is very much like creating puzzles. And you have to just know that this is, at this point, intuitive, because yes, I look at all these artists, I read all these books, I do tons of sketches, blah, blah. But when it comes down to actually making something, one step responds to the other step. Everything is interdependent. I haven't quite completed this, what you might call the foot of this piece, which is part architectural, part figurative. What I want to do is build a stable spot here, or by going out here and starting to build other geometric elements that will be vertical but irregular, that will represent a body. What I often do in my work is I will use a press mold where you press the clay in order to make a precise form to build up my work. And I love the contrast of the sort of the awkward shapes with a perfect sphere to represent parts of a female form or a gender fluid form. So what I'm going to essentially do is make a pinch putt inside the mold. And I basically turn it and push with my thumbs against the plaster. So if in the end, when I take it out, one part is thicker than the other, I can use my loop tool and carve out until I get the thickness of the shell that I want. What I'm going to do now is start to build this up, and I have a couple of forms here that I had to pre-make because when you're building with forms like this, they need to be leather hard or almost leather hard in order to hold their own shape. I have this memory of Betty Woodman's pieces. She had 2 huge vases at the entrance of the MoMA. What she did is she made the main form on the wheel, and then she made sort of wings for them, also on the wheel. But what she probably had to do, like me, is she made those forms, and then she had to wait until they were leather hard before she could assemble them and have them be freestanding against this vase. Right now, I'm working in a totemic way so that it would create a stacking. I've been using images that connote abdomens, bellies, and I put more than one in, usually because I want to create a multiple portrait. I've had an interest for a while in the grotesque, and the grotesque means a lot of things. It could just mean grotto, but it can also mean the other. So for me, creating something that is slightly human but not quite human is one way to speak about a lesbian or a queer identity. I have a piece that's called Standing Double Dish that has 2 of these, one on top of the other, and that I was making a counterpoint to Giacometti's Woman with Her Throat Cut. That sculpture is one of the most violent pieces I've ever seen, and every time I look at it again, it's terrifying. She's splayed out, her body's been violated. She has this sort of spoon feeling about her. And for me, by standing up the spoon, that was a way to take a stand against that piece. I have incorporated surrealism in my work, but in a different way in terms of presenting the female body in a positive, pleasurable light. It reminds me and makes me think of Alina Shapochnikov. Now, I was blown away by the show of hers that was at MoMA. Shapochnikov's work can be seen as pop and surreal and celebrating eroticism in a very positive way. You can also see trauma in her work. The ashtray implies both. But what is surrealist about it, in my opinion, is that she separates body parts and transforms them into objects in such a way that they become beings themselves that are unexpected and sensual. Sometimes you just have to look and think. I'm at a stage in this sculpture where it needs a lot more support on it if I'm going to continue to build it up, which will take time and thought. And usually what I do at the end of each workday is photograph the work, take it home, look at it on my computer, blow up the photo, study it, and then make some decisions. And when I come back, it's easier to make a decision. The parts that could be added to it are also biomorphic and erotic in some form or another, but I can't add them yet. So you have these two forms and possibly the lips. And I'm often like the surrealists, and you can think of Man Ray's big lips, painting of lips, often use that to represent the head. So what I'm going to do is bring over a piece that is almost finished so you can see the comparison and sort of see where this might maybe go or maybe not go. So this is a piece that is almost finished, and it was made differently than the beginning of this sculpture. This looks more directly architectural, but you can see that I have the spoon form or the belly form here that also looks like a mouth speaking. It has a voice. Then the other side is much more erotic and funny way. You know, I don't put surface decorations on everything, and actually I hesitate to call it decorations. To tell you the truth, let's just call it relief, because it's an essential part of the piece. It's not just a little extra. What it does is it creates this three-dimensional illusion. Okay, so what I'm doing right now, when you see this X form here, and I'm going to accentuate these lines by creating a relief here. And then I am going to show you an example of how I make this circle three-dimensional. So I'm spraying this because it's got a little dry, and that makes it, see, I can actually even bend it just by spraying it, because this absorbs the water so quickly. As you can see, slipping, scoring, you do over and over and over again. And I don't care if it looks messy. I think that makes it more interesting. I would put a line here, but I want to show you how I'm going to do the spheres on this. I'm going to just basically make a small pinch pot. So I'm going to take a small amount of clay, make it into a ball like this size, and pinch it out. They're kind of like nipples, but not really, because actually they become little shells. If I put this on without a hole, that's where, again, the air will build up, expand, push out, and crack. So I need to put a hole here, which will go through the sculpture, and attach. This, I just let it be, because if I mess around with it too much now, it'll distort the shape. One thing that I love to do as a sculptor, and it's not always easy with these clay things, is you usually turn things upside down. You turn them on your side. You turn, like, well, maybe this isn't the orientation this is supposed to be. I think it's important to look at your work in different ways. And I also will add, I think it's important to look at work that's really different from your own. I learn more when I look at work that's different from my own. It's been great to have the opportunity to make these two structures, because I don't know where they're going, but this particular moment was about the process of making something. And I'll be excited to finish them and see where they go.